Sort of.
Okay, sort of, right? And David Dix is not here today, and Sandy Roger is playing in his place. So, and we love having her here because she does all that beautiful playing while we're having our lunches and we're visiting. So thank you for that. It makes it so enjoyable. Our patriotic song today is America. Prayer today will be given by Randy Smith.
Let's pray. We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured that your presence is with us. Amen.
And I have been reminded, and I apologize for anybody who's watching remotely, that we need to make sure that we all use the microphones because the people who are joining us by Zoom cannot hear us. So in the future, if you're doing the prayer or if you're the Rotary Minder or author, if you're the responder, any of those things where you need to speak, we all need to make sure we have our microphones. Our song is Rotary, My Rotary, picked by Sandy Roger, and it's in the blue book. Oh, shoot, I didn't get the blue books out. I was so focused on making sure we had food. Who knows this song by heart? Tom, do you want to lead us in this? Oh, Tom and Jim can do it. Sit. I apologize for that, unless somebody wants to do a mad dash across the hall to get the songbooks. Without David here to keep things up straight. Okay, so we're going to have Mrs. Roger play Rotary, My Rotary, and we're going to all hum along. So thank you. Are there any guests today? Do we have any guests?
Not a guest, Andrew.
Oh, Andrew. So he's really a visiting Rotarian. He just happens to be a member of this club. So Andrew, how wonderful to have you here in person. Thank you. So we'll all need to make sure that we take turns introducing ourselves to Andrew, since he's only ever seen us with our little faces in boxes. Are there, if you have an announcement, if you could come up as we tend to do. First of all, I want to, yes, Lee.
I would just like to point out that
Yes, that's on my list here. But thank you. And he happens to be a member of this club too. So I want to first of all thank Amanda Sin and Rachel Kearns in particular. They are the ones who together orchestrated getting all the stuff organized for the food truck. Amanda set up the Eventbrite system. Rachel was the communication with the Will at the food truck. Rachel is home sick. She started to get sick yesterday and I guess is not any better today. And Amanda's little boy had a fever and so she's not here today either. So after working so hard, neither one of them are here. I do want to say that last week it was an honor and a number of us went up to Parma to the Metro Parks for the governor's induction. And so I do want to mention that we have a new banner here. And Larry, as long as you're standing there, come over here. So this is the banner that we will have for the entire year. It's for the home club of the current district governor. Did you have a word or two you wanted to say?
Always. I say, Kathy, you ought to know better than to ask me if I have a word to say. Unfortunately not. I wish I did. No, I really want to thank everybody who came up on Wednesday. As I said, the induction, this is kind of a surreal moment for me. A few years back when I accepted the presidency in this club, I never really imagined I'd go much further than that. I thought that was about the highest honor I could achieve. Then out of the blue, a couple of past district governors gave me a call and said, you know what, why don't you try to apply for this and just go through the interview process. Even if you don't get it the first time around, it'd be good experience. I never expected 12 hours after I interviewed that they'd call me and say, or ask me if I'd accept the nomination. So now I'm sometimes wondering what the world I got into, but no, it is a great honor, and especially to be able to represent this club with our history and everything, especially just coming out of our 100 years. So everything that I can do this year is going to be based towards the clubs. My service or my visits, I'm trying to get clubs to have me come to service projects rather than do the traditional visit or do a combination of both, because I expect that from this club. But that way I can get my hands dirty with them and do something that's actually going to help them and their communities. So, and along with that, we'll be bringing individuals from the district from the photo or public image team to take photos and help write a story on the events, on the service projects, and get them out to the communities. So outside of that, you're going to hear a lot more from me this year. So I'll give Kathy the mic back.
It was a really, really nice affair last week, and the weather turned out beautiful, which was good because it was in an outdoor pavilion. So, but despite that, he managed to still get his daughter zoomed in from Florida, from school. So she was there and participating. Yes, Bill.
Those who attended that get a makeup.
Yes.
Yes. So if you attended it, which Bill Childers did, which is why he's asking, if you attended the meeting last week, you do get a makeup, and you'll need to let the secretary know. I don't know. We'll talk about that anyway. So we also, Randy Smith did recent past president Randy Smith, that one. Quick question, did you want to make an announcement about the other thing that we received, other than having our district governor from this club?
We got the A.C. Baker Award. I did not bring,
We received the A.C. Baker Award. There is something, Randy, it's a patch, and Randy will bring that at another time. We've got to figure out, do some banner adjustments here, since we need to add Larry to the governor's banner over here. We have on August 22nd, we have the Cleveland Indians, the Rotary at the Cleveland Indians night. It's an End Polio Now event. If you're interested, I know that Larry probably was going to announce that too. You were, okay. Do you want to come up and do that? Okay. August 24th, we are still working. That's the one where we will not be meeting here in this location. We're working on, and we also, it's the meeting where we will meet the new teachers. Thank you. The new teachers. And so because that's a little bit of a glitch, we can't have them come here because we won't be here. So we're still trying to figure out if we can do it possibly at Stanton Middle School, and can we have a Zoom component to it so we don't, we're not leaving out our Zoom participants. But if we can't do that, then we'll just meet all virtually by Zoom. So stay tuned. We've got a little bit of time to figure that out. Our next week's lunch, Amanda Sen has organized. It will be barbecue. It'll be a buffet style. And there'll be more choices. It'll be $12 a person. How many people, just a quick show of hands, how many people think they'd like to have barbecue next week? So I'm gonna, somebody who's really quick with mental math, David, if you could do that, that'd be great. And then the Shirts Committee is meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock at Coleman. So if you are interested in helping with that, I know we have David, and who else is on that committee? Bill Nome is on the committee, and Steve Smith is on the committee. So if you're interested in joining, it wouldn't be bad to have another woman other than me on the committee, because I'm representing that whole side of the club. But I do want to make sure that we have shirts for women that are made for women personally. So any other announcements? Larry?
All right, as Kathy said, June 22nd, which is Thursday, is the End Polio Night at the Indians game. We have, at this point, about 280 people coming. Almost 200 of them are going to be up in the Terrace Club. The Terrace Club can hold up to 300. So I still got 100 more reservations that we can get in and get up there. So, please, I think on our is it on our website, the sign up form, or just get with Kathy? She has the sign up form. I also have the raffle tickets again this week for the End Polio Now. First prize for the raffle is a chance to throw out a pitch at an upcoming baseball game. Second prize is a box, or 2 seats in a box section for an upcoming game. And the third one's a signed baseball. They're $10 a piece, or 3 for $20. So I'll stick around after the meeting if anybody wants raffle tickets.
For the Indian.
July 22nd. So this Thursday, 2 days.
All right, I have my raffle tickets, so I'm hoping to do the first pitch. I can't throw because of my rotator cuff, but anyway, so it'll be interesting. Tom knows how well I throw. All right, at this point, I'd like to have Jim Myers do the 100th anniversary moment, and you can come up here, or you can take this other mic.
It's taken me a year to recap the first 25 years of our club as recorded in our Silver Anniversary Edition, History of the Club number 777 of Kent, Ohio. I'm going to quote from the epilogue pages that sum up our club's progress. The 25 business and professional men who became charter members of the Rotary Club of Kent did not fully appreciate the full significance of Rotary nor did they completely sense the possibilities of the organization that they were founding. They soon learned that a realization of the two slogans, service above self and he profits most who serves best, were not to be treated lightly, but the application of the principles embodied in these most mottos were the true spirit of Rotary. The early projects of our club were helping crippled children, the Boy Scout movement, our club's participation in the city's Recreation and Parks Commission, and it helped establish our involvement and our importance in our community. Also, despite the challenges that we faced during a depression and World War II, our Kent Club has promoted the growth of the Rotary through the organization of 6 or 7 clubs in the district, including the only twin charter presentation in the history of Rotary International, when Cuyahoga Falls and Ravenna clubs were officially received into Rotary at the same time, those we sponsored. Lastly, in the epilogue, Paul Harris's letter of congratulation on our 25th year is still appropriate today. Remember, this is the morning of Rotary, not the evening. Well, my future musings will be from the next book of our history, from 1945 to 1984. And I shall be happy to bring that along. Thank you.
And Asid, if you'd like to come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President Kathy. I'm really excited to introduce today's speaker, someone very well known to our club, Stacey Richardson. And I was delighted to read her bio. Has been, born and grew up in Kent and has been here for a long time. A very cool point that she majored and got a degree in French and art history from Hiram, and then of course library science at Kent State University. So, and she's been including the Cleveland Museum of Art and other libraries in Hudson, and then finally to Kent. And then finally, she just celebrated 10 years as the library director here at the Kent Free Library. I'm going to go off script. She did not write that one of her biggest achievements is to have some pretty amazing neighbors in her neighborhood. But she did not write that, but I know I know she meant to, but just must have forgotten. And so we're very excited. I'm also really fortunate to have worked with her and along with John and others at the library. And they've done an unbelievable job, which I've seen firsthand from the start of the pandemic up to now, and it continues to evolve. So we're very much looking forward to hearing how the library has done during this truly unusual time, both serving the community, keeping community safe and protected, as well as employees. So thanks very much. Here's Stacey.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone in person. I think this is only my second meeting back in person, so it's good to see everyone. So today I'm going to talk a little bit, as Asid said, about operating the public library during a global pandemic. As you can imagine, this impacted the library in numerous ways, and we had to quickly adjust and change how we operate the library. And this is not a topic that they teach in library school. So there was nothing that I could do or be prepared for this. And it was something that I was certainly not expecting to ever happen. A few years prior, we did have a flood in the building. We had a pipe burst, and that I was prepared for because we have disaster plans and we know what to do. But a pandemic was not something we were prepared for. I'll give you a quick refresher about the library first. For those of you that are not that familiar with the library, we are one of 251 public libraries in the state of Ohio. We are considered a school district library, so we serve all of the residents of the Kent City School District. So the city of Kent, Franklin Township, the former Brady Lake Village, Sugar Bush Knolls. In total, this is a little over 34,000 residents. But we have 36,000 card holders that have a library card at our library. And that's because in the state of Ohio, any resident of the state of Ohio can get a library card at any library in the state. So we have a lot of card holders from our own community as well as neighboring communities. And we have a lot of Kent State students that use our library as well. We are governed by a board of trustees. There are 7 of them on our board, and they are appointed by the School Board of Education. They serve a 7-year term that is voluntary and unpaid, and they're responsible for the budget for the library and policy making and overall governance. A lot of people always wonder how the library is funded. We have 2 primary revenue streams. The first is the Public Library Fund, and that comes from the state of Ohio. For our library, our Public Library Fund makes up about 58% of our revenue annually, and that's around $1.5 million. We also have a local property tax levy, and that was passed by all of you, hopefully, in 2011, and we started collecting that in 2012. That's about $850,000 to $900,000 annually, and we were very fortunate that that's a continuing levy, so we're not constantly every 5 years back on the ballot asking for a renewal. The remaining 3 or 4% of our budget comes from fines and fees from library patrons. Just to give you an idea of what pre-COVID looked like at the library, in 2019, about a little over 215,000 visitors came to the library in 2019. We were impacted in 2020 because of the pandemic. We only had 107,000 visitors to the library, so that was a decrease of almost 50% of people that attended the library or visited us. In 2019, we had around 47,000 people attend programs and events in person at the library. And in 2020, that decreased by 76%. We were no longer able to offer in-person programs at the library. Story times are similar. In a regular year, we see about 7,500 attendees at story times for the library. This includes children of all ages and their family members. And in 2020, we saw a 64% decrease in families and children visiting the library or participating in story times. And in a typical year, we circulate somewhere between 540 or 550,000 items get checked out from the library. And in COVID year of 2020, we saw a 31% decrease in the amount of items that were checked out. So if we also think about 2019 before COVID hit, and we think about a public library, the things that make a public library special are all things that we were no longer able to do because of COVID. The public library is a location, a physical location in the building that welcomes everyone in the community. So we have our doors open and anyone's able to come and spend time and as much time as they want in our building, as often as they want to. And when they're there, they're gathering with friends, they're meeting other people, they're touching and browsing for books and movies, they're using our public computers, our printers, our copiers, and basically we're a community living room for people to socialize that may be living at home or alone. And we were also delivering in-person items to people's residence and going in their homes and picking up books and dropping them off. So you can see that those core things that we were doing had to drastically change because of the pandemic. So in late February of 2020, that's when news really started to spread about the pandemic. And I had several staff members, news was coming out of China and Europe about this pandemic. And a few staff members came to me and they started to grow concerned about what it would mean for us if the pandemic came to where we were. My facilities manager was most concerned about getting enough sanitizing supplies and cleaning supplies, and he thought we should place a really big order. My technology coordinator was very concerned about what would happen if the pandemic came to Kent and would we be able to work from home. And at that time, I thought that sounded ridiculous. No, we're not going to work from home. No, we're not going to do that. But much to my surprise, a few weeks later, in the middle of March, as the pandemic started getting closer, especially in urban areas in the US, lots of public libraries in bigger urban areas started to close temporarily. Some of the suburban libraries were also starting to close, and my staff was getting more and more concerned that we were still open. At this time, universities and colleges were also announcing that they would be temporarily closing. And this included my son's school in Chicago. So on Friday, March 13th, I had to drive to Chicago to pick up my son who was getting kicked out of the dorms at DePaul University, and they told them not to return for spring quarter. So while I was doing that, I was in constant contact that weekend with my staff and the other directors of the public libraries in Portage County. And we were all sort of trying to make decisions that would impact the public and the community and our staff. By Sunday morning, March 15th, Portage County District Library had already announced they would be closing, and I spoke on the phone to the Reed Memorial Library Director, and they were going to be closing as well. So we made the difficult decision to close the building on March 17th would be the first day, and we thought it would be a temporary closure of just 2 weeks. We announced we would be closed from March 17th until April 5th. But as you can guess, we never opened again after that. What was supposed to be a short 2-week closure ended up being 6 weeks, that the building was entirely closed for the staff and for the public. This is something that we definitely could not plan for. And we like to call this time period at the library. We have 3 distinct phases for how the library operated during the pandemic. And this is the unknown phase. If you remember back to the beginning of the pandemic, it was unknown what would happen. People thought you could get sick if you touched something that someone else touched, if you just breathed air next to somebody that wasn't in your immediate family. So as you can imagine, my staff was terrified to come back to the building, and they were terrified to work with the public. So while we were closed during that unknown period, some of our staff performed essential functions that they could from home. Our staff that ordered books and materials for the collection continued to do that from home. Some of our staff that operated our systems, our IT, our computers, they continued to do work remotely that they could. And then there were 3 essential staff members that were still going to the building. Our facilities manager still went to the building several times a week. It was winter, so we still had to clear sidewalks from ice and snow. He did that. He had to check on the building for the HVAC. And our fiscal officer was there checking the mail every day and paying bills. And I was going in because people were still returning books to the library. So our book return bins were overfilling every day. So I would go in every day, and sometimes I'd take my kids with me and we would empty the return bins. Even though we told patrons there was no need to return anything, we announced you could keep it until the library reopened. One of the other things we did was encourage people not to return anything to the library because we had no staff to deal with all the material. We also decided that we would temporarily waive any overdue fines on materials, and we would waive any due dates. So nothing was due, and we were not charging any fines for material because it was still unknown at this point when we would be able to safely open. During that time, the only thing we could do to help the community was try to promote our digital collections and our digital services. So we tried to do that the best we could on Facebook and social media and on our website. One other thing that we started to do is we had 2 3D printers that were not being used. And this was at the time when the community was asking for people to donate masks or face shields. So we were on a cycle where 2 staff members, myself and my facilities manager, went to the library every 3 or 3.5 hours and changed out the 3D printer to start a new set of face shields. So we were doing that for about 2 weeks. We spent time doing that, and we ended up donating, I think almost 400 face shields. I can't remember, it was almost 400. We had also, before we closed, our children's librarians pre-recorded some story times that we played. We set to premiere on Facebook so that our families that were used to coming to the building every day, several times a week, if not every day, could still see their librarians and get a story time. And while we were all working from home, some of my staff I knew lived alone, and they were pretty isolated at this time. So we scheduled and hosted a couple of Zoom events for our staff just to socialize with each other and to see each other's faces while we were closed. Of course, while all this was happening, I was also trying to think, what's going to happen in the next phase? There has to be a point when we get ready to reopen. What is that going to look like, and how are we going to do it? And the safest way that we could do that was to come up with a curbside delivery service where we would have staff back in the building and patrons could come to the parking lot and we would deliver items directly to their cars. And that's what we did. So starting on at the beginning of May, we called all the staff back to the building And we made all the accommodations we could to make them feel safe returning to the library. We had to install plexiglass barriers between workstations at all of our public service desks. We mapped out on the floor with tape, one-way directional areas in and out of departments for the staff. We created 3 additional staff break rooms so that we could split the staff up into different areas so that we would know if they had been exposed to anybody, we could quarantine only that group of staff members. And we started to plan how it would be quick and easy to deliver service to patrons curbside, which was entirely new for us. We had never done this before. I told my staff that we needed to plan and come up with something that would be the most easy and effective thing for the patrons, even if it meant more work on the part of our staff. So it wasn't a popular decision, but we did make the staff do a little extra work and maybe more work than they may have wanted to, but it ended up being the best for our patrons. They could place holds on items online, they could call on the telephone, and then when they pulled in, got a notice that their items were ready to pick up, they could pull into the parking lot, park in one of their numbered spots, dial our phone number, and a staff member would take out a bag full of their library materials and place it directly in their trunk with no contact whatsoever. And we did this for about a month. Where no one was allowed in the building except for staff. And once that process was working really well for curbside, I started planning with my management team, how are we going to move to the next step, which would be welcoming people back into the library. And we started planning for that right away. And we had to make modifications to the building to allow everybody to come back in safely. So I just finally had staff feeling safe coming back to work. But a whole new level of fear sort of rose up in the staff when they realized that the public was going to start coming back into our building as well. So we had to, again, make sure we stocked up on all of our PPE. We had to put into place with our facility staff hourly sanitation, especially of high touch surfaces like doorknobs, elevator key buttons, handrails, and put in more floor decals for physical distancing, and really getting the building ready to return to the public to be coming inside. And that's what we did. So on June 22nd, we opened our doors for what we called Library Express. And this was the 3rd phase of our operation. In Library Express, we welcomed people into the building, but we had plenty of limitations on how they could use the building. One of the things we did to we were encouraging a short grab and go model. So we wanted people to be able to come into the library to do their own browsing for materials and to pick out what they wanted, but we encouraged them not to stay once they did that. So one of the ways we did that was we removed all of the furniture from the 1st and 2nd floors of the library so that there would be nowhere for them to sit down and get comfortable. We encouraged and recommended no longer than a 1-hour visit to the library. We also changed the time limit on our public computers so that they automatically would be logged out after 1 hour, so they couldn't stay there all day. So those are the sorts of things that we did to make it easy for patrons to come into the building. They wouldn't have to interact with staff very much. We also implemented a self-serve hold pickup so that just like when you order your food online at Chipotle and you can walk into the shelf and pick up your items, we implemented that at the library as well. People could walk in and pick up their own holds. They didn't have to go to the public service desk. They didn't have to see a staff member, and then they could use our self-checkout machines to check out. So all of this was to allow people back into the building, but still keep everyone feeling as safe as possible. During this time, we also thought that it was time to start introducing some virtual programming. People were very interested in having programs, and they missed seeing the people they were used to going to programs with. So our staff got really innovative and started working on virtual book discussion groups and live story times on Zoom, and any kind of other program you can imagine. We created craft kits for both children and adults that they would come in and pick up a bag with all the supplies they needed and take it home to complete them when they got home. We just got really creative with virtual programming, and we did virtual programming only exclusively for 1 year. So from June of 2020 until June of 2021, we did not have a single in-person program at the library for patrons. We just started that this month in July. Let's see. One of the things that was really difficult, all the material that was coming back to the library from being checked out had to be quarantined. So we had, at first we started with a 3-day quarantine. Once it was returned, we put it on a cart and we set it in a special room that was a quarantine room, and we wouldn't get it back out again for 3 days. Then research kept coming out about 3 days wasn't long enough, so then we extended it to 4 days. Then research came out 4 days wasn't long enough, we changed it to 7 days. So that was really difficult for patrons because the items would still show on their account that they had been, even though they returned them, they still showed on their account. So it was a little bit difficult for us to work through the quarantine, but at the time we felt it was necessary. And staff was afraid of touching the materials right after they had been returned as well. So we had a really complicated process of donning all your PPE before you would empty the return bins, washing your hands as soon as you touched all the material, putting it on a cart, and it would roll away and we wouldn't look at it again for a week. So we did this Library Express process for almost 8 months. We operated that way. And then it was only really until February of 2021 or March of 2021 where we started to relax some of our restrictions. We increased the amount of time people could be on the computers. We took away the 1 hour requirement to be in the building. And we started to slowly peel away some of the other restrictions that we had in place. And that was all because numbers had started to decline. People wanted to be at the library. We constantly heard from families that wanted to return and bring their kids. And because vaccinations started rolling out by then, we also were able to start removing some of our restrictions. Flash forward to where we are right now. Like I said, we've just been lifting some of our restrictions and we're starting to get back to normal a little bit. In June, we did launch our summer reading program for children and adults. Last year, we only could do this virtually, and this year it is 100% in person again. And we've been very happy to welcome families and kids back to our building. Most of our furniture is back out on the floor. At first, we only put out the hard, solid surfaces, but we did start putting out some of the upholstered furniture again now. So that is happening. And we don't have any time limits at all on the computers or visiting the library at this time. On July 1st, we finally started to allow members of the public to use our study rooms again and to book and reserve conference rooms and meeting rooms for their organizations or businesses. And starting August 1st, our Friends of the Library group will finally return to the library after over a year of not coming to the building. They're going to start accepting book donations again on August 1st, and they're fully planning for an October book sale. We did not have any book sales during 2020. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. We're also planning for all of our programming for September through the end of the year to be returned to in-person programming. So I know that a lot of our patrons are excited for that. Some of the things that we learned during the pandemic that we're going to continue to do. One of the things we did was all of those virtual programs and recorded videos that we were making for social media. Those have been wildly popular, and we're going to continue to do some of that recorded programming and Zooming when it fits the needs for the program. We're also keeping the self-serve hold pickup so people can do that at their convenience and not have to have any contact with staff if they prefer that. And one other thing we did during the pandemic was to offer, we usually do a lot of outreach to area preschools and to the elementary schools where we would physically send librarians to their classrooms. During the pandemic, we were offering these visits virtually, and we're going to continue to make those virtual options for teachers as well. A few things that we have realized since our meeting rooms have opened up that we are getting requests for. We have a lot more people coming in wanting access to computers that have a webcam and a microphone because they need to be able to Zoom or to participate in a meeting. And our current computer lab is not set up for that at all. Our computers don't have cameras, they don't have microphones accessible. So we do have a set of classroom laptops that we're getting ready to be able to have an in-house use for checking out a laptop so that you can participate in a meeting. We also have a lot of requests for video conference equipment in our meeting rooms, and we're currently not set up for that either. So that's the next thing that we're working on. People always ask what's the most challenging part of working through the pandemic at the public library. And for me, some of the most challenging parts were dealing with and helping to squash some of the staff fear that my staff had in working with the public and coming back to the building. It was sometimes challenging to get them to believe that they could return to work in a safe environment and that it would be okay. This included dealing with some staff illnesses as well related to COVID. We are very fortunate that of our staff of 34 employees, only 3 of them ever tested positive for COVID, and all of them were college students. And they didn't spread it to anybody else in our building. They all got it outside of the building. We quarantined them immediately once we knew, and it never spread to anybody else inside. So we had a really positive, as positive an instance you could have of the illness among our staff. The other challenging part was staying up to date with all of the changing and ever present health orders issued by the governor and by the federal government and the CDC. We were constantly wanting to make sure that we were doing everything correctly and as recommended so that my staff felt more comfortable and so that patrons felt comfortable coming into our building. We did have one visit from the health department. Kent Health Department received a complaint about our operation at some point, and they came to us to investigate. Unfortunately, they found no grounds for the complaint, so we were safe there. Some of the things that my staff felt most challenging were enforcing mask mandates with people that were visiting the library. I'm sure you saw on the news, people that would get angry or upset about being required to wear a mask. We did require, obviously, all of our staff to wear a mask. And then once the mask mandates were passed for the city of Kent in July of 2020, we required them for everyone visiting. And that was sometimes a challenge because if you're at the library for a few hours, you can imagine people don't want to wear a mask for that much time. And we were constantly having to remind people about the mandate. And that was a challenge for my staff. There were some patrons that they were afraid to approach about wearing a mask. The other thing that was challenging for my staff was knowing how to best help our population in Kent of persons that are experiencing homelessness. They rely on our public library for restroom facilities to stay warm when it's winter, to cool off when it's summer, and to sometimes just have a place to be or a place to eat. And when we weren't allowing anyone in the building or when we had the strict time limit in the building, it was really difficult for our staff to turn away some of these patrons that rely on us. We also experienced shipping delays with all of our books and new materials, as many other businesses have. One thing we were not impacted by is the labor shortage that seems to be happening in other businesses around town. We have a full staff right now, and we have plenty of applications coming in, so I feel grateful for that. And fortunately, our funding has not been impacted by the pandemic like we thought that it might be. The state legislators just voted at the end of June to pass the next biennium budget, and the libraries in Ohio, public libraries in Ohio, did not receive a cut like we thought we may. So that's all good news. Quickly to wrap up, I'll tell you about a few quick things we're working on right now that we're really excited about. This week, we finished the installation of new carpet in our children's department. So our staff, as we speak while I'm here, is moving furniture back into the room right now, and we're going to open up later this afternoon after being closed for a week and a half. We're currently also improving our outdoor spaces for the public. Under the portico on the Main Street entrance side of the building, we've put in a new fountain, new planters and flowers, and next week we have a delivery of new tables and chairs and Adirondack chairs coming to fill up that space. So that'll be a nice area for someone to sit outside. We're also going to be working with an architect soon to do a full facilities assessment and a master plan. The building will turn 15 years old in September. And there are some short and long-term projects that the board and myself will need to start planning for to make some improvements to the library. And the other thing I'm waiting for now is just to see how the variants will occur and if that will impact our current service and what changes we might have to go back to. It's been really easy to run the library during this time too, though, I had a really amazing management team that worked with us and were willing to change and be flexible and adapt quickly and easily, and to help my staff to understand that that was necessary. And it was great to have such a supportive board of trustees, including John and Asid and Christine Bargava, and then our other board members as well. So while it's been challenging, it's also been kind of exciting to have so many things to make decisions about and figure out ways we could best serve our community.
Thank you very much, Stacy. So our responder today, I think, is Randy Smith. Randy, if you could come up here. And then we will close with the four-way test.
Thanks, Stacy, for bringing us an update on what you've been through in the last year. Incredible statistics. I had no idea there was that many card-carrying members in this area, if you will. And just for a moment, I also want to thank you for being such a great Rotarian. Many of you know Stacy has been our chair for the auction committee for the last many years. And she also was very instrumental in our major service project this last year, the Imagination Library. So again, thank you for coming today and talking to us, and also thank you for being such a great Rotarian.
And if Stacy could hang around for questions, but trying to be a dutiful president here, we're going to close with the four-way test, and then people who want to hang around and chat with Stacy can do that. So of the things that we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thanks. We'll see you next week. Bring visitors.